Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are embarking on a genuinely thrilling journey. We're going to uncover a hidden, underlying pattern of reality itself, and we're doing it by synthesizing thousands of years of ancient mysticism with the absolute cutting edge of modern cognitive science. It's like a giant puzzle. We're going to see how incredibly diverse cultures, literally separated by centuries and continents, somehow all independently mapped out the exact same architecture of existence. It's wild.
Here's our roadmap to help us map out these heavy concepts logically. First, the illusion of separation. Second, one undivided absolute reality. 3, the universe is pure mind. 4, the root of all duality. 5, the universal path of detachment. And finally, number 6, ancient mysticism meets modern science.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the illusion of separation.
So, let me ask you something. What if the physical world, the one you see, touch, and measure right now, is actually just an illusion? Just think about that for a second. To really grasp this, we're going to use a technique called apophatic deconstruction, or the via negativa. It's basically the process of stripping away all your preconceived notions until literally only the undeniable truth remains. So for a moment, we have to temporarily let go of this deeply ingrained idea that reality is made of separate, solid things. To picture this, the ancient Indian sage Gaudapada used this brilliant, simple dream metaphor. Think about it. When you're dreaming, the world feels incredibly real, right? You touch things, you interact with people, you feel emotions. But then you wake up, and you realize that entire pluralistic world, the whole shebang, was nothing but a vibration of your own mind. The dreamer is real, but the dream? Not so much. Gaudapada argues that our waking physical reality is exactly the same thing. It's an appearance that is entirely dependent on consciousness.
Moving on to Section 2. 1. Undivided absolute reality. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it sets up the ultimate pattern.
When we look across these vastly different traditions, Advaita Vedanta from India, Sufism from the Islamic world, Christian mysticism from Europe, Sikhism from the Punjab, and Hermeticism from the Hellenistic period, a totally stunning pattern emerges. Despite completely different languages, different eras, and different cultures, they unanimously agree on one thing. Beneath the illusion of multiplicity, there is only one absolute, unbroken reality. Whether they call it Brahman, Wujud, or the All, the core blueprint is completely identical.
Let's zoom in on Sikhism's foundational concept, Ik Onkar. When Guru Nanak established this, he didn't just use a word for one, no, he deliberately used the actual numeral, one. And he did this to completely eliminate any ambiguity. He's saying this oneness is absolutely not a metaphor or some nice poetic idea. It is a mathematical, absolute, systematic unity. The ultimate reality isn't just some transcendent force way out there in the sky. It permeates every single particle of existence right here, right now.
And we see this exact same radical oneness over in the West too. Take the 13th century Dominican friar Meister Eckhart. He drew a really sharp line between the dualistic God that people pray to and the Gottheit, this unmanifest, groundless Godhead that is pure, undivided unity beyond all human concepts. Eckhart actually famously declared, God's ground and my ground are one ground. I mean, wow! That was a shocking revelation at the time because it completely collapsed the distance between the creator and the created, perfectly mirroring those non-dual insights we see from the East.
That brings us to Section 3, the universe as pure mind.
Okay, so if reality is ultimately just one undivided thing, we have to ask, how does this incredibly complex physical universe actually exist? The Hermetic tradition answers this perfectly with this quote, "The all is mind, the universe is mental." Basically, if reality is one undivided absolute, then the physical cosmos is simply a mental creation occurring within the mind of that divine consciousness. Everything you see, the stars, the planets, even your own body sitting there, is a localized thought within a universal mind.
And this Hermetic principle connects beautifully to the ancient Sanskrit text, the Yoga Vasista. This text points out that the world has absolutely no objective reality outside of our perception of it. If there's no subject, well, there's no object. The universe is literally the body of consciousness itself. You are not just an isolated physical body walking around in an empty, dead universe. You are a localized expression of that universal mind experiencing itself.
Which naturally leads us to Section 4, the root of all duality.
So, you might be wondering, if everything is just one mental universe, why do we feel so incredibly divided all the time? The answer lies in a sort of glitch in our perception. In Sikhism, they call this Hamai, and in Sufism, it's known as the nafs. These terms describe the ego, the I-me making machine, as it were. So the crucial point is that it's this finite individual self that generates the persistent, stubborn illusion that you are separate from the divine and separate from everything around you. The ego acts exactly like a prism, fracturing the single unified light of reality into a million separate, distinct colors.
Think of it like the classic wave and ocean metaphor. The illusion is thinking you're just a single wave, a separate, isolated physical ego fighting desperately against the tide. But the reality, which is achieved through states known as jhana or phana, is realizing your true self is the entire undivided ocean. I mean, the water in the wave and the water in the ocean are exactly the same substance, right? The problem isn't reality itself. The problem is the narrow lens of the ego through which we're trying to view it.
All right, Section 5, the universal path of detachment.
So how do we fix this glitch? Well, two radically different historical figures actually provide the exact same shared solution. On one hand, you have the Sufi poet Rumi advocating for fana, which is the ecstatic annihilation of the individual ego through overwhelming divine love. On the other hand, you have Meister Eckhart advocating for Abschiedenheit, which is more of a cool metaphysical detachment and a radical emptying of the self. While Rumi uses the fiery language of love and Eckhart leans into cool detachment, both paths lead to the exact same non-dual state of consciousness where the illusion of the separate ego completely collapses.
As we move closer to the modern era, teachers like Shirdi Sai Baba synthesize these concepts into a highly practical toolkit for everyday life. He beautifully blended that devotion and inner inquiry. The idea is, by cultivating unwavering faith and active patience, or shraddha and saburi, and combining that with the relentless inner question of who am I, the restless mind gets pacified. Chanting the divine name is also used to dissolve the ego. Through this practical application, the ego dissolves, and the seeker just seamlessly merges back into pure consciousness.
Let's move to and see how this builds right into Section 6, Ancient Mysticism Meets Modern Science.
Enter modern cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman and his fascinating theory of conscious realism. Hoffman mathematically argues that consciousness is not some accidental byproduct of the physical brain. Nope. Actually, scratch that. He says consciousness is the fundamental fabric of reality. He proposes that interacting conscious agents actually create the universe. And, most astonishingly, he suggests that space and time are not objective realities at all. They are just a user interface. Guys, this is practically a word-for-word translation of the ancient concepts of Maya and mentalism directly into modern scientific vocabulary. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. Hoffman goes on to explain that physical matter is exactly like a desktop icon on your computer screen. When you drag a file to the trash can icon, you know you aren't actually physically moving a tiny little metal trash can, right? You're interacting with an interface that hides incredibly complex underlying code. So, physical matter, space, and time, they are just adaptive shortcuts. They are the icons our consciousness uses to safely manipulate our environment. The mind is the only true reality. The physical world is literally just the dashboard.
And this whole idea is heavily supported by Carl Friston's free energy principle in computational neuroscience. Friston shows that our brain doesn't just passively receive reality, it actively constructs it through a predictive mind that's constantly trying to minimize surprise. This means consciousness is a dynamic, active process, not a static thing. More importantly, this framework proves mathematically that the mind, the body, and the environment aren't separate, isolated systems. They are statistically unified. They act as one continuous, unbroken process. There is no separation whatsoever.
And that brings us to the grand synthesis of this explainer. Whether you're reading the sermons of a 13th century German friar, studying the verses of an ancient Indian sage, getting lost in the poetry of a Sufi mystic, or analyzing peer-reviewed papers by a modern cognitive scientist, you are looking at the exact same blueprint. Beneath the illusion of multiplicity, beneath the ego and the physical interface of space and time, there's only one undivided conscious reality. To put it simply, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Which leaves us with this final, mind-bending question. If separation is truly an illusion, if reality is completely undivided, and you are literally the universe experiencing itself through a localized lens, what will you choose to experience next? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the patterns around you, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.